If the newest leak about the future of Dungeons & Dragons is to be believed, then D&D is at war with its community, creators, and player base. This video will cover everything that led up to this point and why creators are walking away from D&D entirely. To start from the beginning, D&D had a huge surge of popularity in the mid to late 2010s for a multitude of reasons during the reign of 5th edition. This drove more creators towards it. Content creators of all kinds, be they writers, artists, designers, YouTubers, manufacturers, they all gathered around this game. It was a nexus of creative flow. Over the course of several years, D&D became less of a brand and more of a community. It meant more than the player's handbook or the starter set. It meant Runesmith's Twisted Taverns. It meant Critical Role. More than anything else, it meant enjoying it in your own way, all the way down to the unique way that you run the game at your table. Third-party content reinvented Dungeons & Dragons, and it is the only reason I'm here at all. I own exactly one D&D book, the Player's Handbook, but I own countless pieces of third-party content, from books to merch. Wizards of the Coast can't keep up with the creators, and they know that. Every time they release one good book, creators have already released 10 excellent works of art, with 10 more on the way. And the execs at Wizards and Hasbro know this. This is a trend that has only been getting more popular. Third-party content creators have been knocking it out of the park lately. Just look at all of the Kickstarters. So many creators from around the world were creating, profiting, and building communities around specific niches in the D&D community, cultivating the best ways to enjoy this one game in many different styles. Generally speaking, everything improved. Anyways, D&D had a golden age for close to 10 years now. But of course, nothing lasts forever. It's time for the bad news. In late 2022, the CEOs of Hasbro and Wizards had an investor call where it was discussed that D&D as a brand is undermonetized. This raised red flags throughout the community, and for good reason. Of everything discussed, and there was a lot, I'm just going to focus on the most relevant of the flaming mess that is the current state of Dungeons & Dragons public relations. To quote Game Rant, Wizards of the Coast is seeking to transform Dungeons & Dragons into a multimedia franchise, with more options for profit as it seeks to create a recurring spending environment that reaches more fans. So people spent the next week memeing about a Dungeons & Dragons Battle Pass complete with microtransactions, but the word multimedia is key. Multimedia, of course, means movies, video games, and more than just tabletop. But this seems to have been altered, as just a couple days ago, on January 3rd, it was revealed that Hasbro has had some financial difficulties. Their shares fell 40% last year. The company also canceled an internal project codenamed Jabberwocky and 2 other games that were in early development. Also, we should take into account the fact that Dungeons & Dragons is by far Wizards' biggest IP. I don't think anyone would disagree with the fact that when it comes to public awareness and cultural impact, Dungeons & Dragons is bigger than anything else that Wizards of the Coast has ever done. However, despite being the biggest role-playing game ever made, out of the $1.3 billion in net revenue that Wizards of the Coast posted last year, a UBS analyst estimates that D&D is only responsible for $100 to $150 million in annual revenue. $1 to $150 million is a lot, but that's not exactly the point. The point is that from a corporate perspective, something as huge and game-changing as Dungeons & Dragons should generate more profit. This could mean a lot of things, but in my opinion, this suggests that D&D is shifting away from expensive video game projects and refocusing on mastering making money off of the existing tabletop game. And who better to monetize than the people who create their own content better than them? This takes us to the open game license. For those who don't know, any Dungeons & Dragons content that is created by anyone other than Wizards can only do so because of the Open Game License, a document that effectively allows people to create and profit off of their own original Dungeons & Dragons content. No paperwork needed, no need to pay anyone royalties, just go for it. That is about to change big time. What we know for sure, just before the end of the year, they released a blog statement stating exactly what their goals are. Coming very soon in 2023, they stated that any creator has to abide by these rules. 1. If you make more than $50K a year off of what you create, you have to report your revenue annually to them. 2. Include a creator product badge on your work. And 3. Accept the license terms and let them know what you're offering for sale. They also added that if you create content and it makes $750,000 within the span of 1 year, you will have to pay royalties on that. This change has caused a huge rift in the community. Many say that these changes are all completely reasonable, while another huge group of people are saying that this is all either terrible right now or a slippery slope to something much worse. If the leak that we're about to read is to be believed, then the people who believed the worst from Dungeons & Dragons are absolutely correct. Yesterday, January 4th, a journalist named Linda Codega stated that she received the new OGL from a reputable, unnamed source. And it's a lot to take in. What's written in here is genuinely community killing. She writes that the updated Open Game License is incredibly restrictive, demands community surveillance, and most importantly, renders the previous Open Game License an unauthorized agreement. I will also clarify that this is all unconfirmed, and while I will show you signs that I believe point to it being true, they still remain unconfirmed and should not be treated as fact. Let's rip off the band-aid. First off, if this is to be believed, just to let you know how much of a big deal this is, the current OGL is just less than 900 words, which is pretty short for a legal document. Basically just enough to say, go do what you want, champ, it's all yours. The new OGL 1.1, as they call it, is over 9,000 words, which means they are adding a lot. Also, we finally have a set number for the royalties you owe. You will owe 25% on any money that you make that exceeds $750K. The leak also says that if you release on Kickstarter, you only have to pay 20%, which sounds strange, but the director of games at Kickstarter, John Ritter, retweeted the thread with the leak and said that Kickstarter was contacted after Wizards decided to make OGL changes. So Kickstarter managed to get a lower percent plus more being discussed for people releasing D&D content. In my opinion, this gives the rest of the leak a bit more credibility. It's still unconfirmed, of course, but this means that at least this one select part of the leak is much more than just he said, she said hearsay, given that someone who can speak on the subject with authority is only affirming this part of the leak. This OGL is in fact pointing its barrel at you, the creator. They state that the original OGL was not intended to subsidize major competitors, and they have a lot of competition in the form of their own community. Some people say that this spells a dark future for games like Pathfinder, but personally, I do not think that any other independent RPG is in any danger here whatsoever. The new OGL will be applied retroactively to anything published before the new one went into effect. As soon as the new one goes up, the original will be unauthorized, meaning that you can't just leave the new 1D&D alone, create previous edition content, and be good. You have to comply with the new rules for every edition. The legality of this one is questionable, and I've heard debate online over whether or not they can even do this. I don't know either way, but this was in the leak. However, we are now at the absolute worst change in the entire document that leaves creators with zero security. Wizards can, quote, modify or terminate this agreement for any reason whatsoever, provided that they give 30 days notice. So if any of you thought that 750k was a weird number for them to settle on, and that it was just a starting point, you may be correct. It means that stability is dead, and Wizards can effectively do whatever they want. If they wanted to own everything you created under the OGL, they would just give you a 30 days notice and carry on their merry way. Not that they have to. The leak states that the company already gets the right to use anything that you create however they want. Wizards will have a, quote, non-exclusive, perpetual, irrevocable, worldwide, sub-licensable, royalty-free license to use your content for any purpose. There are many other changes in this 9,000-word document, but these are the most important ones, and I think they get the point across. Lastly, Wizards of the Coast has not commented on any of this since it became news. Now, what does all of this mean for the future of Dungeons & Dragons? In the official statement by Wizards, this is before the leak, Wizards of the Coast told us that these changes exist to stop two things: third parties from making NFTs and big businesses exploiting their intellectual property. Now, I'm not sure about you, but I have not been seeing any of this. I haven't seen any NFTs, and I haven't heard from big businesses exploiting D&D. Unless, of course, they consider you, the creator, the exploiter. They have already publicly stated that they feel owed if you make a certain amount of money, and with a clause that says that they can change the rules whenever they want, I suspect their ambitions do not stop at 750k. If all of this is true, and I'm being very careful to say that it may not be true, but for now, working with this leak that Wizards of the Coast has not confirmed or denied, many creators who make their livelihood off of D&D content are shaking in their boots, and for good reason. So, what does this mean for the future of Dungeons & Dragons? If this is true, shows like Dimension 20 and Critical Role will step away from D&D. Publishers will distance themselves as well, releasing content that is compatible with, but not officially a product for, D&D. Creators like me, who have been working on 5th edition content, will be discouraged and stop. Between the leaks and what we know now, two things are clear. This hurts Wizards of the Coast more than it hurts the community. The community is only as hurt as we allow ourselves to be. For me, I'm unfazed. I play several systems outside D&D, and I know the creators are not going to stop creating. Even if the creators have to switch games, they will keep creating, and I will keep buying their products. But many of you may just be D&D players and are understandably upset about where this is going. I understand that this sucks, it genuinely does. But if this is true and the 1.1 OGL is released, even if you think the current changes are okay for now, it's always 30 days away from being uncooperative, and creators know that. So, my recommendation for the Dungeons & Dragons community is to treat these leaks with their due skepticism, but be prepared for them to be true. Unfortunately, only time will tell, but things are looking really bad right now. If anything happens, I'll update you either on Twitter, or if it's really big news, I will make another video for it here on the channel. Till next time.